Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to the poem of the day for today, Wednesday, September the 10th, 2025. We're going to continue today in our small weekly series doing Shakespearean sonnets from the collection of Shakespeare sonnets and poems, the Folger's Shakespeare Library Edition. If you haven't read Folger's Shakespeare editions, I highly recommend them because what they have in them is on one side they have the text itself, as you can see here, and then on the other there are annotations, um, bolded notes referring to specific lines that help you trace allusions or even find different denotations of words as they might have changed over the past 400 years. I really like these editions. There's often little pictures over on the side too that might serve as kind of some visual aid. So strong recommendation there. And I'm not endorsed by the Folgers people, but I do endorse them. Today we will be reading sonnet number 29. And this is another of the sonnets that falls within the long series that is believed to be written about a man that the speaker has affection for, and whether this is erotic or sexual affection can be read multiple different ways. Whether it's strictly a romantic can be read multiple different ways, or whether it's kind of high level platonic, that applies in there. I think this has a little bit of a mix of the erotic and the platonic within it, and there's a lot of pining within this sonnet from the speaker toward some unknown man that's outside of the poem and that he longs for and longs to be like. So this is sonnet number 29. When in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy contented least. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and in my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. Okay. The overall sort of summary of this poem is that the speaker is feeling forlorn about a kind of dejected status that he's experiencing. And the thing that brings him some sort of joy or consolation is remembering a love that he has for a friend. In the middle of it, also, we get a sense of his kind of envy or jealousy or aspiring to be like someone else. But the couplet at the end sort of reunites his happier state with thoughts of this other person who exists outside of the poem, this other man. And it's nice in the sense that sometimes the couplet at the end serves to uh, be kind of a second turn in the poem, but here it serves more as a summary. And as a couplet, it completes, but then also kind of brings those two together, even though not physically or literally, it brings them together in thought and imagination, which I thought was a nice way of using the couplet and those two lines that go together with oneself. I've spoken a lot about the structure of a Shakespearean sonnet on the previous videos, and so the two things that I really want to focus on today is a couple places in which he breaks away from the traditional structure of a Shakespearean sonnet, and then to focus a little bit on some of the sonic qualities of this sonnet. So one place in which the rules are bent and broken is line 3. And you'll remember that a Shakespearean sonnet is in iambic pentameter, and so there should be 10 syllables, 10 beats per line, 5 iambs. And yet if you count this out, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, we have 11 there. So it expands a little bit beyond, and it's beginning to push there. We also have a break from traditional structure at line 9 and line 11. We spoke yesterday that we talked about the masculine endings and the feminine endings, the way that they were described. It's not my term, but that the masculine endings end on a stressed syllable, on an upbeat, and the feminine endings end on an unstressed syllable or a downbeat. So these two lines would read, this is line 9, yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising. It's a downbeat because you wouldn't say despising, it's despising. And so we end on a lower unstressed syllable. The same with line 11. Like to the lark at break of day arising. So despising and arising are rhymed together on 9 and 11, but they also both then have that feminine ending to it, that downbeat. One other place where the structure is broken is lines, sorry, I want to make sure I'm referring to these correctly, 3, 4, and 5. I think, no, I'm sorry, 4, 5, and 6. Just 5 and 6. My apologies. Just 5 and 6. Where, again, we are supposed to be in iams, according to the traditional structure of unstressed and stressed, but they begin with two trochaic substitutions. We're using a trochee this time, which is stressed then unstressed. And you'll hear it this way. Wishing me like to one more rich in hope. So that reads based on the emphasis as wishing, not wishing me like, right? Wishing me like. So it's just one trochee at the beginning. We go stressed, unstressed, unstressed, stressed. Same thing happens with featured like him with friends possessed. So we have featured like him. And so those two lines are beginning with trochaic substitutions. Taking those three things together, I again like to think that that's expressing the speaker's kind of inability to meet a certain expectation or a certain convention, that there's an instability to the feelings and the internal life of the speaker. And so we're having some of the stylistic features kind of vibrating on the side, a little bit unstable, giving way a bit. And to speak very briefly to the sonic quality, I think there's a, within the first half of the sonnet, right before the volta, and the volta is really nicely marked with this yet at the beginning of line 9, a yet being like a okay, but before we get into the sestet at the end. There's a lot of these soft vowel assonant sounds in the first half, the all, alone, and deaf, heaven that are in there. And then we get a repetition of 3 instances of like within 2 lines. Wishing me like, featured like him, with friends possessed. And what's going on in there is, I think that pining and that desire to be like someone else, or to be able to have someone else who is not like yourself, feeling down on yourself and insufficient and inadequate. Then in the second part, in the sestet, we get these more consonant sounds and longer vowel sounds. Ways the consonant sounds I'm paying attention to occur mostly in lines 11 and 12. Like to the lark at the break of day, and then we get these S's. Arising from sullen earth sings hymns at heaven's gate. And I read it with emphasis in order to make my point there. We get then at the beginning of the couplet a 4, F-O-R transition, which again suggests that we're not going to throw another volta in there, but we're kind of gesturing towards summing up. But there's 2 really nice puns or kind of double entendres that are in the second half of the poem. The first one is haply, I think on the line 10, which could be by chance, I happen to, haply, or it could be a shortened version of happily, I think on the, as the speaker's tone is beginning to change as he imagines and recalls his relationship with this man. And then the use of state in line 10 and 14. Happily I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at the break of day. And state here is meaning, emotional state, but also my position in life. And then he uses it again in the final line, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. And there it's kind of referring again to emotional life, but also position and status, wealth, possessions, things like that. So there's a lot going on in this poem on the structural level that I think are very interesting. And so that's what I wanted to focus on primarily, was the style, the form of it, more so than the content today. So there's certainly more to be said about the content, but that will have to remain for a different reading of Sonnet 29. I hope that you enjoyed the sonnet and that the video pointed some things out for you that were interesting. And thank you for joining me again. I wish you all peace.